Let's now look at a few trickier examples. One of the obvious variants is the trochaic inversion at the front of the line. Shakespeare will often use a trochee on the first foot to create a strong, weak, weak, strong sound before the caesura. So you get a dun, 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 dun sound. Let's look at an example of that. We're looking at Sonnet 116 for these examples. We can hear that trochaic inversion with some demotion that we talked about earlier. Love's not time's fool. You can see that, remember, stress is relative. And so in this case, love's not is strong, weak, but here we have what we would call a spondy, but it's not because the iambic pentameter takes over. This times is demoted while fool maintains its full stress. So you can hear the trochaic inversion. Love's not times fool, caesura after the fourth syllable, though rosy lips and cheeks, and we return to a completely normal iamb. These trochaic inversions tend to happen on the left side of the line. All of the variants tend to happen on the left side of the line. Let me clarify even further, on the left side of any half line, because you will also find variants right after the caesura. So on either the first foot or the foot right after the caesura, you will find variants. But by the time you get to the right side of the line, you will return to the iamb because the line has to become regular in order to take the rhyme. And the rhyme is always marked by strong. So in other words, the line ends on a strong in order to take the rhyme. So the line will become regular. You'll see the right side have iambs, and that's because the line traditionally in verse, this comes from medieval French verse and medieval Middle English verse, the 10th syllable will always be strong because it has to take the rhyme. Here's another example. It opens with trochaic inversion. Let me not to was the first 2 feet. Now, if we read the entire line, you'll hear that the caesura is tertiary. In other words, it happens after the 3rd syllable. Let me not to the marriage of true minds. Let me not to, that's weak. Now notice at this point, it moves into iambic pentameter. The marriage of, here is promotion, true minds, and here we have the case. So here we have the case of demotion. So we have 2 weaks with one given a slighter stress and 2 strongs, one given a slightly weaker stress. If we numbered this out, you would see that this would be 1, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and you can hear it. Let me not to the marriage of true minds. What's also interesting about the tertiary caesura is that it puts a pause right in the middle of the foot. And so the impression you have after this caesura is an anapes, which is a trisyllabic foot, but it's not. The to the marriage, to the mare, weak, weak, strong. But it's not an anapes because the caesura has split the foot in half. And then we get to the next line, admit, impediments, And then here is our caesura, you can hear it. Admit impediments. And then we get another trochaic inversion after the caesura. Love is not love. Shakespeare loves that strong, weak, weak, strong. But usually you're going to find this strong, weak, weak, strong pattern, this da, 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 da pattern at the first foot and the second foot. So here we have trochaic inversion at the first foot, but it's 2 in a row. That's not expected. And then we have a classic trochaic inversion followed by iambic. Usually we'll find this in the first and second foot, but here we're finding it after the caesura. So we have all this variety in the first 2 lines, and then we get a normal iamb, which alters when it alteration finds. And of course, the caesura is after the when. So, read together, let me not to the marriage of true minds admit impediments. Love is not love, which alters when it alteration finds. You can hear it. Now here's another one that should bring pause. Like, for example, how can you have a decasyllabic line of 10 syllables when you count the line? And there are 11. One that, looks 2, 3, 4 on tempest, 5, 6, and is 8, 9, 10, 11. And of course you know that the caesura is after tempest, that looks on tempest and is never shaken. Well, the answer to this is very simple. This is a feminine ending. That means that the line should end on a strong, but in fact ends on a weak, and that weak is not counted. It is extra metrical. Let me show you. That looks, there's the first foot, on tempests, and that's promotion right there, is never shade. That's where the line officially ends, and this part is extrametrical. It doesn't count. It's a feminine ending. The same situation is going to happen here. Whose worth's unknown, although there's a caesura right there, although his height be taken. This is also extrametrical. It is not counted. So that is a 10-syllable line. This is also a decasyllabic line that counts to 11 at first. 1, bears 2, it 3, 4 for out, even 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. That's not possible. In this case, we are going to use a metaplasm, which is a figure of orthography which adds or subtracts a letter or syllable. And in this case, we're using syneresis. It allows us to slur the word. It makes a 2-syllable word become 1 syllable. And the example here is even. But bears it out even. It sounds like we're slurring it. Sometimes I'll say the word slur. Sometimes you'll slur syllables away, even to the edge of doom. And how can we prove this is actually happening? How can we prove this slurring or the use of syllables other than the fact that it exists as a figure? Because the meter tells us, but bears it out. But bears it out, pause, even to promotion the edge of doom. That's how you prove it. Here's another example of a metaplasm. The diastole. It's an example where a short vowel is lengthened into a long vowel so as to add an extra syllable. Oh no, it is an ever fixed mark. That fixed, that ed adds another syllable. Just to show you, 1, 2, it is an ever fixed mark. And it also works on the meter. Oh no, it is an ever fixed mark. It's always going to be weak. Now, beware, not all the time you're going to find the use of an accent grave. That's that particular accent mark over the E. Sometimes you're not going to see that in text from this period. You just have to know when you're reading poetry. Sometimes the poet is expecting you to add that because they presume that you can hear the meter and the syllable count. In this case, the diastole has been marked out for you. Below that is syncope. You find this in the books of the period. Syncope is when you cut out a letter or syllable in the middle of a word with an apostrophe. The apostrophe marks the dropping of a letter in order to drop a syllable to regulate your meter. Syllables, which is the next one, the next metaplasm I'm going to show you. And that's right here. Syllables is the contraction of two neighboring syllables from two different words. So whose worth is unknown becomes whose worth's unknown. And that's another example of it being printed so that we can see it obviously, marked by the apostrophe, as we see right here. Loves right here is another example of syllables. Love is not times fool. Love's not times fool. In our next video, let's look at a sonnet by Shakespeare.
Alright guys, don't forget to like and subscribe and ring that notification bell.